Dr. Randall, the Soul Doctor, author of Soul Doctoring, Heal Yourself, Heal the Planet, shares her 40 years of experience as a cross-cultural practitioner, medical futurist, and expert in 20 different modalities of healing, along with amazing interviews with some of the leading minds in medicine and big thinkers in all walks of life. The stories of our lives are the woven energies of our soul's paths. They feed and ignite the spiritual light that nourishes the universal soul, the one mind, the cosmic consciousness where we all come together. This podcast is going to be a deep dive into the personal stories of people who have made significant contributions to the planet. What formed them? What moved them to become these leaders and innovators that inspire us so? Hi, Connie.
Hi, Gail.
Oh my God, we have Connie Kaplan, my dream teacher from the 90s. She was my first dreaming teacher.
Yeah.
And, sitting in her circle, I was, felt like I belonged to a sacred organization of women. And I think I did. And I learned so much from her. And I went on to have my own dream circle based on a lot of what she told me in her books. But she's just an amazing teacher. And I always thought she's brilliant. My impression of you, Connie, was how can you have so much spirituality and heart and such a big brain at the same time? That you didn't get stuck in your brain is a miracle.
Well, especially in the last book that I wrote, called The Emergence of a New Cosmology, that's one of the things I talk about, is that the coherence between the head brain and the heart brain is what actually creates clear mind.
Beautiful.
And I think that's what I've been striving for all my adult life, at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, maybe I picked up on some of that. Oh, okay, so as long as we're on that, let's unpack it later, because I want to ask you more in depth about. Let's tell my guests who you are. So Connie is a spiritual mentor who lives in Southern California. She holds an undergraduate degree in English, a master's in radio, television, and film production. She has a second master's in psychology and a doctorate of ministry. She was raised in Texas as a minister's daughter, and spirituality has always been an important part of her foundation. She spent the first 25 years actively involved in a traditional religion. In her mid-20s, she explored other spiritual systems. However, as a career choice, she went into television production, spending 15 years working as a script supervisor and associate director. In her 30s, she reached what one might say the all-American dream. She was married to a wonderful guy. Can we say his name?
Victor Kaplan. Yeah.
He is a very nice guy. I've met him. He's executive producer, notably of Ellen. And she had a beautiful, healthy family, a nice house, a great neighborhood, great friends, an enviable career that offered her plenty of options and time to be a mom. In other words, everything was fine. However, unexpectedly, in her late 30s, she was suddenly struck down with a mysterious virus, which rendered her almost helpless for 2 years. So I knew you in your 30s?
You did.
That's a long time ago, right?
It was last millennium.
Wow. Right? Wow. During that time, she was unable to work and incapable of handling most normal life circumstances. She experienced a profound spiritual transformation because most of the time she spent in bed, right, Connie? And, but during that time she slept. And I love the way she says this. She dreamt herself awake and got a huge download of information, I think, in the process. Dr. Kaplan has authored 5 books: The Woman's Book of Dreams, Dreams Are Letters from the Soul, The Invisible Garment, A Colorful Life, and The Emergence of a New Cosmology. Each of Kaplan's books is unique and each shares a new and bountiful body of spiritual information. And I would add to that for the transformation of those who read it.
Thank you.
Kaplan's website, well, she'll tell us what her website is at the end, so you can all contact her. I don't want you to have to write that down right now. So did I forget anything, Connie, that you want to add to your introduction?
No, that's about it. Thanks. That's
Oh yeah, that's about it. It's very much deeper than that, but I always say the overlay of it. So since we're on your new book, you told me the emergence of a new cosmology was not going to wait to be born, and that's why you wrote it. You had to write it. But as I understand it, most artists have to create what their creation tells them to do. Like Picasso, for instance, why are you painting? Well, I cannot not paint because
right.
it's forcing me to do so. So tell me a little bit about that. Could you tell me a little bit about your book?
The latest one, The New Cosmology?
Yeah, and what forced you to, necessary to express it
well,
at this time?
For many, many years, for like 30 plus years, I had been teaching the dreaming work and the invisible garment work. And every time a new kind of technology came forward, I incorporated the new technology. And just in the past 5 or 6 years, when Zoom happened, I was able to really incorporate a new technology where people from all over the world, right, as you know, can come to one space and be in communication with each other. So I was very, very busy teaching the dreaming work and the invisible garment work online. And then along came COVID, which it didn't change my way of teaching that much because I'd already been teaching online or on Zoom, for several years before COVID. But it did change my way of living. And so I found myself more and more and more able to just stay at home. And, that's kind of a mystic's fantasy. It's like, I don't have to think of reasons to not go out anymore. I don't have to think up reasons for somebody else to deliver my food and my groceries and run my errands for me. And so the more I stayed home, the more deeply I became immersed in the deeper teachings of the invisible garment work, and I just started. It was like another mystical experience. I just started bubbling with a realization that over the course of the somewhere between 200,000 and 60,000 years that humans have been operating on this planet, we periodically have to rewrite our story. There was the time when we started farming, and that changed our story from being hunter-gatherers a little bit. Obviously that period was 10,000 years, but right, that story changed. There was the time when we realized that the sun wasn't circling the earth. Instead, the earth was circling the sun. That changed our story a bit. Each time we discover newer, bigger, wider, deeper things about ourselves, our story about ourselves has to change. And that's really the definition of cosmology, the story that we tell ourselves about ourselves. And so I just started realizing that this body of work that I teach, which I call the invisible garment, is also the new story. It's the story of the evolution of consciousness, and it's the story that helps us understand where we're going in a much more delightful and optimistic and insightful way than just, oh my God, where are we going? What's happening?
So that's the invisible garment that teaches us that?
Yes, the principles of the invisible garment are the 30 spiritual principles that interweave to create the fabric of humanity. So how about, let me go back and do a little chronology here. back to what you were talking about when I was ill in my 30s. And there was a period of a little over 2 years where I just slept. Except for occasionally when I would get up to go to the doctor, one of whom was you. And during that period, there was, without my really knowing it, there was a huge download of information about dreaming and the power of dreaming. So I started teaching the dreaming teachings, and I wrote the 2 books, The Woman's Book of Dreams and Dreams Are Letters from the Soul. And then,
those are great books, by the way, and I often refer people to those books when they want to know, well, what can I read about dreaming? And it's those 2 first books that help people a lot.
Thank you. And I'll plug at this point that I do teach dreaming. I mean, that's a big part of what I do. So online, on Zoom, and you can dream with dreamers I have dreamers from all over the world dreaming together. So it's a really, really fun experience. But then a few years after I finally woke up and didn't have to sleep 15 hours a day, I had an experience at my father's deathbed. Can I tell that experience?
Oh, please.
All right. So
I remember some of it, but I was going to ask you to tell it to my guests. Yes.
Yeah, so I'll tell it. So I was at my father's deathbed. He had been in a coma for about 4 or 5 days. My sisters and I were taking turns sitting with him around the clock. And it was just before dawn on the 17th of December in 1994. And I was with him. And I was doing something like praying. I wasn't exactly a prayer kind of girl, but he was a minister, so he was a prayer kind of guy. So I was just basically, kind of saying, look, he's done. We're clean. Everything's over. Let's let him go from this body. And as I said, it was just before dawn, and I heard the door open behind me, and I thought, 2 things. First of all, I thought, ooh, my shamanic teachers would not approve that I'm sitting with my back to the door. But secondly, I thought, it's got to be a nurse coming in to check his vitals or something, because there wouldn't be any visitors coming in. He was not in a hospital, but in a retirement facility. So I turned around, and Gail, there were these 2 angels. There were 2 angels standing in the room. Now, they didn't have on like robes and wings and halos and stuff, but I could tell they were angels because of the love that was in the room. There was like this golden honey, like, I don't know, frequency in the room. And it was like, oh my God, this is love. And being the cynic that you know me to be, I said, why don't you use the door? Angels doors. And they said, we're here to open all the portals. And whoa, all right. So now I probably would tell the story differently now, but I will tell it to you the way I remember it. They said, we need you to do something for us. We're here to take your dad, but we need you to do something for us. And that is to write down a body of information that humans need to know. Because most humans do not understand what an incarnation is, what a human incarnation is. Most humans think that you're here to do something or accomplish something or produce something or build some karma or work out some karma, or most people think it's about what you do or how you behave. But it's not that at all. It's about delivering a gift from the level of soul into the realm of form. It's an energetic gift, and it is the gift that is you. And we can demonstrate to you how you know exactly what your gift is. And we need you to write that down. And at the time, that was in 1994 or mid-90s, and there were like a lot of channelers and that kind of thing, and I was just kind of turned off to that whole thing. And I was like, I'm not going to sit on a stage and talk in a squeaky voice from a disembodied no, I think you've got the wrong room. And they said, no, you write it down and we will send the people to you who need to know it. And that's what has happened over the years. Now, they blasted me at that particular point into a dimension that was completely otherworldly. It was a dimension of frequency and tone and color and shapes. I just kind of was walking through this forest of geometric shapes. And I knew that this was the place where all the answers are, but I couldn't think of any questions because, when you're in the place where all the answers are, there aren't any questions. So after about 45 minutes of being in that space and recognizing the immensity of what it is to be a human, I agreed to write down what they wanted me to write down. They took my dad, and that was an amazing thing to be able to see. And then for the next 4 or 5 months, and this was at the time when I knew you also.
What did you see when they took your dad?
Oh, interesting question. I saw the pearly gates. I saw people that were, his father and our dead ancestors and dead friends, and they were standing there waiting for him, and they were rejoicing and welcoming him. And I saw him leave his body. It started at his feet, and the energy just left his body, and he was disoriented there in the beginning, and then everybody surrounded him, and I did question that. I said to the angels, no. Where's the tunnel? Where's the light at the end of the tunnel? I know what death's supposed to look like. And they said, no, everyone's death looks exactly like they want it to.
Uh-huh.
And he was a preacher. He was a sweet Jesus preacher. He'd been preaching St. Peter at the pearly gates all of his life. And there it was for him. Yeah.
Because, I was with my brother when he left his body, and it was beautiful. He went into the light riding a white polar bear.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, naked, smiling, laughing. And again, maybe this is a commonality, but, the polar bear was going towards our ancestors that were already crossed over, that were waiting for him.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So anyway, over the next few months, I woke up pretty much every night around 3:30 in the morning and wrote for a while. And then this entire body of information came through. And basically what that body of information says is that there are 30 spiritual principles that interweave the fabric of human life. And whenever someone is born, they sign a contract, so to speak, with at least a few of those principles, somewhere between 8 and 12 of those principles. And that contract is the gift that they're here to deliver. So all of the principles are available to all of the people all of the time, but you have a very few specific principles that are your gift. And, they showed me how to sort of divine or define each person's gift. And there's a whole body of information about how to live the gift that is you. And so I taught that for many years. And that's what I'm saying when I'm talking about those 30 principles. I now realize, 26, 27 years later, that those 30 spiritual principles are also the principles that have carried humanity and the changing of our story and the evolution of human consciousness all the way through from the beginning to the now. And it gives us a way of perceiving where we're going, what we're evolving toward.
As a group or individual?
Yes, as a collective.
Well, how might we use that, Connie, right now when we're because I feel it's my purpose to awaken people in another way than you're doing it, but to their responsibility here on this planet, and then simultaneously spiritually. So using your mystic abilities and predictions, what can we do to awaken people to their responsibilities to help combat what the crisis, the health crisis, the climate crisis, because the problem is, I teach this, and I know this, that 98% of people are disengaged because they feel like it's too big for them. They can't do anything. And I'm trying to empower them in telling them that if they do small things, they can make a big difference. But how can you um, dovetail into that?
Yes, well, one of the things that I teach is that there's a difference between doing and being.
Mhm.
And if you have learned to be the principles that you were born to be, then whatever it is that you're supposed to do shows up to be done, and it can't be done by anybody else but you.
Mhm.
That's how important each individual is. There are doingnesses, but they're not things that you sit around and make up to do because you think that might be a good thing or you think that might pay a lot or whatever. They are things that show up and say, do me. And that's what I call them, the do me's, as opposed to the shoulds.
No, I totally get that, but you've
Yeah.
got a bunch of people that don't understand these teachings.
Right. But
How
what we're trying to do, you and I, in different ways, as you said, but still, we're trying to teach people to remember who they are,
Mhm.
therefore let their do me's show up. And the reason I
Mhm.
put on my glasses is because I'm looking at your natal chart. So here's the thing. The way this teaching works is that when you take that first breath, you are writing a contract with the solar system and with the cosmos. And that contract is readable because of where the various planets are at the moment you take that first breath. It's like the planetary configuration is a great geometric form. That's part of what I saw when I was walking through that place of
Mhm.
geometry.
So is this the same soul contract reading you made for me before?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I used to call it soul contract reading, but when I was just ready to publish the book, which I wanted to call Soul Contract, Carolyn Meese published a book called Soul Contracts or something. So it was like, oh, okay. So we changed the book and we changed the metaphor around it, and I like it even better.
Yeah.
Say that when you take that first breath, you are surrounded by an invisible garment of spiritual threads,
Ooh, I got goosebumps.
swaddle you and hold you throughout your life. The primary reason that each of us is born is readable in that spiritual garment. And for you, this is what's so interesting to me about you. The primary principle in your spiritual garment is the principle of awareness. And awareness is a principle that is about two things. It's about being able to expand your consciousness or your vision or your attention to the ultimate levels. And it's also about being able to contract your attention to what needs to be focused on in any given moment. And that's what I know to be true about you. You
Mhm.
can hold a huge, large, great, big, fat picture of wholeness and work with a client or a patient about what it is that they need at this moment to emerge as their own wholeness. So I love your particular invisible garment pattern because it really does express who you are. I mean, it's like um, in addition to the sun, the main principle in anybody's garment pattern is the sun principle. So let me back up a little bit. These 30 spiritual principles have a numerological correspondent, numbered 0 through 29. Just like the houses of the zodiac have numerological, they're numbered, they have degrees numbered 0 through 29. So that's how we recognize which principles are yours. We look at the zodiacal degree of your various, of the planets when you were born, and we pull the numerological correspondent of the principle. Did that make sense? Did I say that well?
Well, it does to me, but so the numerologic value of, in other words.
Right. Okay. So in your case, for example, the sun was at 9 degrees of Taurus when you were born. 9 corresponds to the principle of awareness. So that's how I know that awareness is your primary principle. Okay. In your garment pattern, Venus, which is represents your emotional body, represents how you emotionally respond to the world. Venus was at 24 degrees Aries when you were born. Okay, so Venus in your garment pattern was at 24 degrees of Aries when you were born. 24 corresponds to the principle of humility. So that what that tells us about you is that as you have emotional responses to the world, the principle of humility shows up. And in this garment pattern definition, humility means knowing yourself authentically. One of the things the angels said to me about humility is it's equally arrogant to think too little of yourself as it is to think too much of yourself. You need to know yourself absolutely authentically. And that's what the emotional body does for you in your life. But here's what's really interesting. In your garment pattern, when you were born, Mercury, which represents your mental body, or at least the neocortex, the way you sort of interpret the data that you take in from the external world, Mercury was at 13 degrees of Aries when you were born, and that is the principle of intelligence. So, back at you about the big brain thing. You have a brain that operates much like the central nervous system of the cosmos. A brain that takes in information, interprets what's important, rejects what's not, sends it to where it needs to go. That's your neocortex. That's the way you interpret life. So anyway, I could go on and on and on, but those are some examples of how we know what people's various energetic configurations are by looking at where the planets were when you were born and what principle they correspond to.
Beautiful. Yeah, I remember some of that, actually. Beautiful. And I still teach that exact thing, just that you told us years ago. It's just as arrogant to think less of yourself as it is to think more of yourself. It's an important thing to know. It's an important universal truth.
Yeah, it's kind of shocking to think about it too, right? Because in our culture, we're taught, oh, no, you should always think of yourself as a doormat, especially as a woman. You simply mustn't think that you're important.
Actually, if you look at blue zones, which I do, I look at everything, but for health, like one of the things they have in common is empowered women, which I think is cool. Mm-hmm. And so they don't think like that. They don't think, more of other people than themselves. They think of themselves as equal to other people.
Well, of course, there are about a bazillion of you and me people in this world. There are many, 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 many of us who are creating small little pods of groups who are understanding truth from various perspectives. In my book, The Emergence of a New Cosmology, I call it polyperspectival. Those of us who are learning to wake up are polyperspectival. That doesn't mean we look at this perspective and then this one and then this one and then this one. It means we can look at a lot of perspectives simultaneously and and integrate how that is to look at not only the human world but all of the worlds polyperspectively. Yes,
I like that word. What the way I call it is diversity, that we need to have respect for each other's diversity, but that diversity, if dealt with correctly, brings unity.
Yes.
Because we need all those different perspectives.
Yes. Brain scientists are really learning and understanding and preaching right now that is exactly why the neocortex is divided into two, because let me make sure I get this right. The left brain is about specifics and data and breaking it down and science and looking at the parts. And the right brain holds the larger picture. And they don't communicate with each other totally, but when they do communicate with each other, that's the fullness of humanity. That's what we have that other creatures don't. That ability to see detail and wholeness, and that is exactly what you're talking about. That's unity. Yeah.
That's awesome. So how did you attract all these people from all over the world to connect with you on Zoom?
Remember when I told you that the angel said, just we will send them to you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I have never spent $1 advertising or trying to promote myself. I have no interest whatsoever.
It was word of mouth then?
Yeah.
Wow. That's very cool.
Or word of mouth, or through podcasts in certain circumstances like this, where people, I'm sure someone will watch this and go, "Oh, that resonates with me. Let me go there." I'll tell you a very funny story. I'm sure you remember this. My house, when I used to live in Santa Monica, California, I planted a nature yard. I planted plants that were natural to the Santa Monica Mountains. And it was unique. That was before people were doing xeriscaping and that kind of thing. It was just kind of unique in that neighborhood. And one day, my doorbell rang, and I went to the door, and there was this man standing there, this like gorgeous, fabulous guy with like hair down to his waist, and and he had a eagle feather in his hand or something. And he said, "I just had to meet the woman who planted this garden, and my guides have told me you have something to tell me." So I brought him in, and we ran his chart, and I told him about the invisible garment, and I told him about his principles, and he invited me to come to Peru, and he would show me around. And I took, I don't know, I think maybe 19 or 20 people, and we all went to Peru. And he was a shaman who just happened to be walking on my street in Santa Monica. I mean,
wow.
How did that happen? That kind of thing just started happening.
When did you go
to Peru?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to say 2005, 2006, something like that.
I went to Peru.
Did you?
About 3 times. Yeah. Yeah, it was, and it happened. It wasn't like I sought it out. This woman invited me to be part of a group to build a garden for biosustainability of the jungle plants, because of the things I was interested in. And then, of course, there was a shaman there, and it was old growth forest, and he just died like a year or so, Antonio Moreno. He was one of the old jungle shamans, the real thing, So I get that. That's awesome.
Those are the things that I'm talking about. The difference between the do me and the decision, the should.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like I made a big choice and said, okay, I'm going to gather up a bunch of people and go to Peru and find me a shaman. It was the other way around. It was
Yeah.
like this guy rang my doorbell
The
and said,
shaman found you. Yeah, I get it. That's one thing I've always loved is the concept about the soul cluster. Can you explain that to my guests?
yes, that was one of the teachings of the invisible garment work. So when it is time for first of all, backing up, part of this work reminds us that we are not a one man, one soul world. In other words, it's not like you have a soul and I have a soul and he's an old soul and she's a good soul. The human soul is a dimension of consciousness that is unified. It's a unified field of consciousness. We all emerge from the same soul, but with different imperatives, right? So when the part of the soul from which each of us comes, decides to take an incarnation, it's not just me all by myself. There's a whole group of people, usually 20 to 30 people, that incarnate together more or less within the same time span, 2 or 3 years apart, maybe. And we're all here to participate together in delivering this message that our part of the soul wants to deliver. So we have soul cluster siblings out there. We don't usually know them. We don't tend to meet them, at least not in Western culture. Some of the indigenous cultures still reincarnate in the same villages that they've been in for hundreds and thousands of years or whatever. But in Western culture, we tend to scatter and do our own thing and then come back together. Sometimes in dreams, you will meet your soul cluster people. When you have those dreams where you meet up with somebody and you just know them so well, and they just seem to be such a part of you. And when you wake up, you go, I don't know that person. Who is that? That was probably a soul cluster person in your life. But yeah, we're all very busily delivering our gifts in different ways, in different environments, and without knowing each other. And then we review at the end, or in dreams sometimes we review how we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So are you still having people track their, of course, they're tracking their dreams, I'm sure, but are they tracking their dreams according to the zodiac?
According to the location of the moon. That's one of the primary parts of the dreaming teachings, is that where the moon is when you have the dream influences the kind of dreaming that you do.
Mm-hmm.
So the way we define dreaming in this work is that when we go into sleep, unlike what we have learned from the psychological aspect of what dreams are, this work teaches something different. It says when we go into sleep, we dissolve into super consciousness. We dissolve into meta consciousness. It's not like we go into our own little private, what do they call it? Unconscious or subconscious. We go into the void. We go into the place where all potential exists. We go into the future. And there we have an experience. We exchange energy with superconsciousness. And when we do that, we want to remember it. So on our way back into waking consciousness, we write a story. That story is what we tend to call the dream. But in fact, the story is a metaphor for what we experienced in superconsciousness. Now, that's difficult for some people, because that basically says your dream may not be about you. Your dream may be about the future of humanity. Your dream may be about something much bigger than you. And so this teaching involves understanding the location of the moon when you had the dream, because the moon is highly, highly influential on your body fluids, on your body well-being. And it is influential when you are in lunar consciousness, which is what we call being asleep, on the kinds of experiences you will have in superconsciousness. So yes, we track our dreams. We notice where the moon is when we're dreaming the dream. So, for example, get these glasses back on here. When you were born, the moon was in Cancer. So when the moon is in Cancer every month, there will probably be special kinds of dreams that you have. I can't tell you exactly what they are because each person has a very unique pattern of dreaming. But when the moon is in Cancer, we call that a power day for you. So we look very carefully at power day dreams. The moon was in a certain phase. It was just not long after a new moon when you were born.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 2 weeks or something after the new moon when you were born. So that particular phase is also a power day for you. And then once a year, the moon's going to be in the exact same sign and the exact same phase that it was in when you were born. And we call those big power days because those days, those dreams are often prophetic. They tell you something about what is definitely coming, either in your life or in the greater story.
Yeah, I'm always aware of my power days from before.
Good.
But you were mentioning about the dream may not be about you, and sometimes I'll have dreams and I'll go, and I'll look in the mirror and I'll go, and then I'll see who it is. It's not even me. It's not me,
That's an incredible dream, to look in the mirror in the dream and see someone other than yourself, and to be humble enough to realize I'm dreaming someone else's dream. And when I'm dreaming someone else's dream, it's entirely possible that I am assisting them in some way.
Yeah.
You may be dreaming a woman who is in trouble or who is being abused or who is, whatever.
A lot of times they turn out to be future patients.
Oh, really? Oh, that's great.
Yeah, like I'll see them in the next few days or months, or sometimes I don't see them at all. And I think, well, you're welcome.
Yes, exactly. That's a great attitude to have about it. And I encounter people often who say, "Oh, I dreamed you. I know your face. I dreamed you." Yeah, because I was headed your way, honey.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about one of your other books, the Colorful Life.
Okay, so a few years, I'm saying maybe 3 years after the invisible garment work came through, and I had that experience with the angels. I had another experience in which I saw this ball of light coming out of the sky, and I thought, oh dear, it's like a asteroid or something. I didn't know what it was. It was a ball of light coming out of the sky, and it stopped like right in front of my face, and it burst into these spheres, these spheres of color. And then all of a sudden, out of the middle of them also burst an infinity symbol. And on the infinity symbol was all the numbers 0 through 29. And I saw then that certain spheres of color are created by a cooperation between these spiritual principles that I teach. So again, over the course of the next 3 or 4 months, these spheres of color were defined for me as cultural influences. So I was able to understand that these principles not only apply to individuals, but they apply to cultures, and they influence the way we as cultures focus on certain kinds of we give our attention to certain aspects of reality. So, for example, this culture is highly focused on um, sort of left brain material, science, and breaking things down into smaller parts in order to hopefully understand the whole. Although often the left brain doesn't really get all that into understanding wholeness. But different cultures are focused on wisdom and compassion, or power, and we're definitely in the West into power and manifestation. So these color spheres give us understandings of how different cultures focus on different aspects of what it is to be human, and those aspects are equally important. And
Mm-hmm.
so it kind of, to study the color work kind of makes war and that kind of, you're wrong and I'm right, and let's, kill each other about it, um, moot. It helps us understand studying these color frequencies. And color is just a metaphor for what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the various kinds of cosmological frequencies that different cultures focus on.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
so,
I studied that with you. I don't know if you remember, but when
yeah, you were there in the very beginning before I really even understood it that well.
yeah, but
We
it
would
was
all go cluster together on a Sunday and talk about blue. Let's talk about it, right?
yeah, but it was really cool how the different colors were assigned to the different houses, which were assigned to the different number of degrees, and it had an added
Yes.
influence on, the reading for the individual, but also the vibration in general for the planet. I think it would probably seated I had this vision, it was about 4 or 5 years ago now, in to create a cleanse based on chakras and colors and science. So, it's called Randall's Rainbow Detox, but if you so you go through the colors, it takes 7 days. I only include 7 chakras, and, the people when they're finished, because they get simultaneously a cleansing of their chakra and their physical body in that area, it's all based on science and color teaching. So it's cool, it's very neat. And
That is very cool, and probably incredibly healing. Maybe one of these days you and I will get together and we'll talk about the chakra system, because that's another piece of the teachings that I don't think I was teaching that much when I was with when you and I were together. But what I have been shown is that the each of these 30 principles is a chakra.
mhm.
So it's not so much just the 7 chakras anymore. It is 30 chakras that float in our Taurus system,
Oh
or
yeah, no, we got together and we drew pictures of that,
yeah, okay,
actually.
good.
Yeah, yeah. It's great. It's really good work. Um, so also I understand you're going to be teaching new classes starting in January. Is that right?
Yes. Um, every year I teach the whole series of classes based on each person's individual garment pattern. But we teach it in groups. So the classes are very small. I keep them very small, 15 to 20 people. And we go through each person's garment pattern, principle by principle. And I used to do that individually. And then I realized how much people learn from each other by
Right?
staying together.
Yeah.
So, yes, the beginning class of the invisible garment teachings starts in January. January 5th is the first day of that teaching. So yeah, anybody who's interested in learning more about that, sign up. Let me give you the website.
Please.
If you sign up for my mailing list on the website, you'll receive an invitation to join that first class. And as I said, I was going to name it The Soul Contract, but I did end up naming it The Invisible Garment. And so that is the name of my website, theinvisiblegarment.com.
And they sign up for your newsletter, and then they get an automatic invite?
Yes. And of course, there's plenty of stuff that you can like roam around on that website. A lot of information and a lot of free stuff and a lot of encouragement to learn what your invisible garment is. It's very powerful teaching, and it's like something it's just so interesting because I'm the teacher, but the information is not mine.
Right.
The information came through, and there it is, and it's very, very powerful.
Well, I learned a lot from you. I learned a lot from you, and it stays with me to this day. It's reflected in, my books, my creation, my teaching. So thank you, Connie, for all of that.
All of your do-me's, right, showed up because of who you are.
Well, I think it's more of a be me.
More easily recognizable because you know who you are, right?
Well, I think I knew who I was from birth because I had a near-death experience, and I saw those angels, and they told me I had to go back, and I said, "I don't want to go back. It's painful there," because I was born over a month early, and when my mother forced me out, she didn't really know what she was doing. I don't hold blame to her, but she just didn't want to lay in bed for 3 months. And during that day and age, that was extremely early. And, they said I had to go into an incubator. There was only one incubator in St. Joseph Hospital in Omaha, Nebraska. And the neighbor lady had her baby at the same time. And she wasn't as strong as me, so they put her in. She became my best friend. However, she got blinded by the oxygen tension. And so that's a whole nother thing. I mean, we taught each other how to see.
That's so beautiful. Now, I want to ask you a question, though. What do you mean by your mother forced you out?
She stood up, jumped up and down, and pushed because the water broke.
Mm-hmm. So I just want to make this one suggestion to you.
Mm-hmm.
You had choice there.
Yeah, I think I wanted to come out. I was ready.
Right, yeah. Well, I'm sure you already know this, but it is the fetus that releases the hormone that starts labor.
Well, I think it was because my dad had sex with my mom, actually, because those hormones do that too.
I have a friend who she and I met in a exercise class, Prager's exercise class,
Mm-hmm.
and it turned out we learned that we had the same due date and the same OB. And so we were very excited. We were going to be in the hospital together, and we were going to give birth to our babies together at the same time. Her baby came 2 months early, and mine came 3 weeks late. So they're like three months apart. But the point is that early thing is a measurement that doesn't necessarily take the baby's needs into consideration. Yeah. I mean, obviously, if it's too early for viability, it's too early. But I'm just suggesting that you were ready to be born.
Yeah, I accept that. I accept that. But, almost died doing it. But, I left my body, and, I really did.
Right. So
but that was also a gift because those angels told me right then and there, you have a purpose. You need to, I didn't understand what it meant, but they said, you are here to be a bridge between people and medicines. I didn't know what medicines were. I hardly knew what people were, and my first feeling was compassion for my mom and dad because they didn't really do it on purpose, to hurt me. Just one of those things.
But you also had an invisible garment pattern that meant you were here to deliver the gift of awareness into the world.
But I also saw there's more than what's here, and knowing that and what they told me changed my life forever.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Fit right into the big part of my awareness. That I spent my whole life seeing small and big. It's very true about me.
Yeah, exactly.
So how else can we get in touch with you, Connie?
Well, of course, I'm, perfectly available to anybody who wants to email me, Connie Kaplan at me.com. I'm not trying to hide anywhere. So if you have questions, anybody has questions.
You also have something here about why we take classes. You want to go into that a little bit?
Well, the point is we take incarnations in order to participate in the evolution of human consciousness. Many of us live in the belief that we take in incarnations to do something for ourselves, about evolving ourselves, whatever. But the more important piece of an incarnation is how we interface with each other, because after all, we're not as separate as we like to believe ourselves to be. So I have really found that with very small groups working together in this kind of information, we learn way more about what it is to be a human than if we just study me and myself, and so these classes are small. They involve, first of all, you get a certain number of teachings every week. Let me take the first class, the one in January. It's just a 4-week class. Each week you get access to 4 teaching videos. The videos are short, under 10 minutes, and you can watch them as often as you want to. And then each week we have a group Zoom call in which everybody is invited to come together and ask questions and share and whatever. But also, I have a group of people who have been studying with me for somewhere between 10 and 20 years, who know this work inside out, and they are our mentors. And so we create small groups, study buddy groups. So it's optional, but if you want to, you have one meeting per week during that class time with your study buddy groups. And you get a private session with me also during that 4-week period of time. So there's an enormous amount of personal attention on you, but at the same time, there's an understanding that it is group work, and that as we share with each other, we learn from each other, we learn more about humanity and ourselves. So that's kind of in a nutshell how I structure all of my classes. And as the classes, as you kind of progress in the classes, the first class is just about your primary 3 principles, the sun, moon, midheaven of your incarnation. The second class that we teach later in the year is about your ego, your personal, we call it a delivery system, the personality that you put together in order to deliver the gift. And we study in that session the lies that sometimes get incorporated into us. The lies about don't be too loud, don't be too smart, don't be too cute, whatever it is, all of the lies that we incorporate about ourselves. We study that during the second class. And then the third class is a study of how the universal pillars, the cosmos, supports us in our incarnation. So there's that. And then after that, we also have the color class where we teach the work that I was talking about earlier. And then after that, we have the cosmology class where we talk about what it is to rewrite our story and how we are in the process of deconstructing an old story right now. And who's going to disagree with me that we're deconstructing an old story right now, right? So we're in the process of deconstructing an old story in order for a new pattern to emerge. So you move on, and then of course there are the dreaming classes. I have the dreaming classes where we teach the dreaming work and the dreaming. After you take the initial dreaming class, there's an ongoing dreaming circle that meets twice a month online. So there's really a lot to enjoy with each other, with a community of like-minded people. But as I said, I keep it small enough that everybody gets personal attention. It's not like signing up to a class where there are going to be 150 people on a Zoom call. So,
no, I just love that, Connie, that you're actually creating community. I mean, real community online and empowering women in sacred work. And there's nothing better than that. We need that right now. So thank you.
It's my doomie.
It's your doomie.
Yeah.
And your BB. So we need to get together and talk more often. This was great. Anyway, so we'll be in touch.
We will. And I love you a ton, and I'm so glad to be back in touch with you. I've missed you.
I love you too. Okay. Say hi to everybody. Okay, bye-bye. Happy birthday to Ben.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm Dr. Gail Randall, creator and host of Soul Stories. I just want to thank you for listening to my podcast. I recently got a notification from the International Podcast People, and I was astounded that so many countries are listening to my podcast in the category of alternative health. So thank you, and please continue to listen. I especially want to thank Egypt, Croatia, Japan, and Switzerland, also France and Ireland, because my numbers were quite high there. So keep up the good work and check out my Instagram at Dr. Gail Randall, and particularly check out my Instagram TV where you can hear me talking about alternative medicine subjects and also see me. It's a very good show, and I think you'll like the subjects. It's on 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time every Friday, but it's recorded there, so you can find it there anytime you look. Okay, thanks again. I love you guys. This is Dr. Gail Randall from Soul Stories, and author of Soul Doctoring, Heal Yourself, Heal the Planet. I want to thank Saltology, our sponsor, at bathsalt.com, which fits perfectly into my medicine bag as it, like me, calls upon the ancient wisdom and modern technology to heal, especially with the stresses and ills of our modern times. The Bokek brand uses organic salts combined with organic essential oils sourced from ancient Egypt to provide a perfect remedy for your bathing ritual and healing from modern stresses. The Relief RX brand is a unique one-of-a-kind healing salt that uses organic CBD, treated with a unique emulsification process to create nanoparticles which easily enter the skin to most effectively heal and relieve aching muscles and joints. Whether from chronic inflammation or just a rough workout, this is the perfect healing bath, especially when you add the organic essential oils of neroli, lavender, eucalyptus, or grapefruit. Your body, mind, and soul will be lifted and soothed like never before. Go now to bathsalt.com. I also want to give special thanks to Larry Antonino and Agora Borealis Recording Studio for music and score, and also to Close to the Earth gailrandall.com for IT and computer assistance. Also supported by Randall Wellness Network, bringing health and wellness to you directly. Medical futurist Dr. Gail Madeleine Randall brings 40-plus years as one of America's most forward-thinking doctors, healers, and emerging authors onto a diverse media platform to empower our paths to health, wellness, increased consciousness, and vitality. Gail Madeleine Randall, MD, has long practiced, taught, and encouraged patients to take control of their healing processes and journeys. Randall Wellness Network provides a 360-degree platform for people to heal themselves, and she most emphasizes regenerative approaches for healing individuals, communities, and the planet as one. For more information, go to drgmrandall.com and Instagram at drgailrandall, and check out the robust Instagram series on Instagram TV, also Facebook, Randall Wellness, and also Dr. Gail Randall.